Hello. Welcome back to our study on the book of Revelation for our 7-part series on chapters 16 through 18, entitled The Seven Bowls of Wrath, Armageddon, and the Vision of the Fall of the Dragon's Allies. We completed a 5-week section on chapter 16, The Bowls of the Wrath of God and Armageddon. This video is part 6, which I'm going to have to split into 2 lessons on chapter 17, entitled The Great Whore and the Beast. Initially, I thought I could get it done in one, but I'm wrong. So let's get started. Quoting M. Eugene Boring, chapters 17 and 18 are one unit, concentrated on the scene of the fall of Babylon. Chapter 17 identifies Babylon and announces her fall. Chapter 18 is a lament for the destroyed city. As the New Jerusalem is John's most extensive picture of salvation, so Babylon is his most extensive picture of judgment. John has deliberately structured his composition in order to place this detailed description of Babylon and its judgment immediately before his pictures of the Parousia, which is Christ's second coming, and the descent of the New Jerusalem. William Hendrickson gives a fine introduction that I'd like to share. 5 enemies of Christ have been introduced: the dragon, the sea-born beast, the earth-born beast or false prophet, and now the harlot of Babylon, and the man who bears the mark of the beast. In chapters 15 through 16, we have seen what happens to the men who receive this mark. In this present vision, the apostle shows us by means of symbolic pictures what befalls Babylon, the sea-born beast, or the Antichrist and the false prophet. The dragon's defeat will be described in Revelation 20. Broadly speaking, this section may be subdivided as follows. Chapter 17 describes the nature and tells the history of the great harlot Babylon. Chapter 18 shows us the inevitable, complete, and irrevocable character of Babylon's fall. Looking forward, chapter 19 introduces us to the rejoicing in heaven because of the complete overthrow of Babylon and because of the wedding of the Lamb. It also represents the author of this victory, the rider on the white horse, his triumphs over Babylon, the beast, and the false prophet, and his execution of final judgment on his enemies. So it's a look backwards, a look where we're at, and a look where we're headed. Let's get started here. I'm going to have you read the entire chapter 17 so you get the whole story all in one full section here. However, we're only going to address verses 1 through 6 in the remainder of this video today. So you can read it on these and the next several slides, quite a few slides, with great pics, or you can open your own Bible and read it at your leisure. I'll stop on each slide for about 5 seconds. All right, that's some story, huh? Let's unwind it. Things to investigate a little further. Here's a big list for the entire chapter. So we're not going to cover all these questions today. But basically, through today and next week's presentation, we're going to focus on who is the whore, who is the beast, what are all the detailed descriptions for each character mean symbolically, and what do we take home from this chapter. I'll state right now that your handout is going to be organized slightly differently from the final form in the presentation. So topics may be in a slightly different order, and there is additional material. I apologize for the changes. So let's focus. Why is John shown this in the wilderness? Why is he shown this vision in the wilderness? Wilderness refers to a place of vulnerability, but also a place of wandering, which can also describe the world apart from God. So the woman in the desert is vulnerable, and she's wandering, and she's away from God. That's the description of the woman. It's very important that we see this is where we're beginning, in a place of wandering. Why is John being shown the judgment of the whore, and what is the judgment? Come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk. What a humdinger of a verse. This refers to the judgment or destruction of this, quote, great harlot at the return of Christ. When John is shown the judgment of the great harlot, he's seeing an ally of the beast in this chapter, and it's during that time period of the vision, and not from John's day or our day. So what he's seeing is something at a different time. Some biblical background. The great harlot is associated with Babylon. The prophets foretold the judgment which would come against Babylon. Both Isaiah and Jeremiah devote major passages to this topic, which frankly are essential background to understanding this chapter. Isaiah 13, 14, and 37, and Jeremiah chapters 50 and 51. As we've seen before, the prophecies in the Old Testament often contain a mix of near-term and far future predictions or consequences. In the case of the prophesied destruction of Babylon, the near-term aspects were fulfilled in the capture of Babylon by Cyrus, explained in Daniel chapter 5, verses 30 through 31. But the city of Babylon and what it stood for and what it began as has never been destroyed as predicted by the aspects of Isaiah's and Jeremiah's prophecies. She is to be judged because she has corrupted the earth with her fornication and shed the blood of God's servants. Michael Gorman reminds us that Babel, or Babylon, is the source of all anti-God religions and philosophies. The seductive and self-glorifying city is the antithesis of God's people, also called the city of God, or the woman in chapter 12, the Lamb's bride of chapters 19 through 22, and the New Jerusalem of chapters 21 through 22. So Babylon is being held up in opposition to all of these other cities of gods that are included in the later portions of Revelation as a whole book. Let's do a comparison here of the woman of chapter 12 with the harlot in chapter 17. If you remember, in chapter 12, the woman was pregnant, clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. Babylon's description is the great mother of harlots, the earth abomination, the woman in scarlet, gold, jewels, and finery, drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. Quite the contrast going on here. And you can see the rest of the other names and descriptors that are used. I'd like to read a short excerpt from Edith M. Humphrey, who's wrote a paper, let's see, called A Tale of Two Cities, Transformation, Continuity, and Contrast in the Apocalypse. And this section is from The Mad Mistress in the City, which I thought was great. Babylon emerges then as the flip side of the refugee queen, the name that he assigns to she assigns to the woman in chapter 12. Babylon is proud, where the refugee is humble. She seems to prosper, where the refugee is in exile. She rides on the beast, where the refugee is pursued by the beast. She is a pretending queen, where the refugee is a deposed or fleeing queen. She is the mother of evildoers, where the refugee gives birth to those who are faithful to the testimony of Jesus. Babylon's end is destruction, while it seems that the refugee will sooner or later be reinstated. The refugee displays a holy dependence upon God, where Babylon wields an evil dominion, seeking her independence from God. Babylon's willfulness and madness will eventually lead to ruin, despite a present time of prosperity. Now for the last three questions, which I will cite here in a section. I really needed a chart to get this sorted out in my brain. And these next few slides, which is a version of which is in your handout also on pages 29 and 30. I want you to take a look at this handout, and I'm going to let each slide be on for about 10 or 15 seconds in case you don't have it, and compare the details in the vision that John writes down in the early portions of this chapter with the later portion of the chapter, which is supposed to be an explanation from the angel. In your opinion, do you think the angel really tells us what the vision means? What do you think the vision's about? And have you been able to sort out who's who here? So I'm going to you can either turn off the video and look at your own chart or look at what's on here for the next few minutes or so. Okay, why did I do all that? I was really hoping the angel would give me all the answers I need to teach this particular chapter. And what I found was the angel gave me more detail, but I can't really say that the angel's information really helped me figure out all the descriptions or exactly who is the whore, who is the beast, who are the waters, who are the heads, and who are the horns. I didn't really feel that I got my answer. So let's take them one at a time. And the first thing we're going to do is to start with the harlot, and that's pretty much where we're going to stay through the end of this presentation. Next week, we will take up the issue of the beast, the waters, the heads, and the horns. So let's summarize what this passage tells us about the harlot. One, John's amazed by her. The great whore, it's got to be a woman. It is a woman, but I would just say it's representative of a woman, that it's not all women. Let's put it that way. She's sitting. That's important. Seated on waters and on the scarlet beast. Clothed in purple and scarlet. Wears the blue. That's key. Adorned with gold and jewels and pearls. She's having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and impurities of her fornication. On her forehead is written a name. It's a mystery what it means. Babylon the Great, the mother of whores, of the earth's abomination. What does the name mean, and why is it a mystery? Was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. Exactly does that mean? The woman is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. We get an answer that the woman is not a woman at all. It's really a city, but we don't get it till the last verse. This harlot is Babylon, and the real question is, what does Babylon represent? The scripture passages that should be studied as forming the foundation for the symbolism are listed at the bottom of the slide, and I do believe I put that in your handout. If not, pause here and feel free to write it down. Well, let's continue on. John is amazed by her, more accurately, shocked, stunned, and appalled. It's a woman, it's the great harlot. Babylon is called the great harlot. In other words, the symbol indicates that which allures, tempts, seduces, and draws people away from God, according to William Hendrickson. Babylon is never called an adulterer or adulteress. She's always a harlot. It's two completely different Greek words. Hence, Babylon was never the Lamb's wife. She is not the false church. And anytime you read a commentary where they're saying Babylon is akin to what's written in Hosea, it's wrong. It's a completely different character. N.T. Wright has a great analysis in 4 parts, which I'd like to share with you. Babylon is a whore. It's a metaphor which depends upon John's perception, rooted in his Jewish and Christian belief, in the goodness and God-givenness of the created order that men and women are called either to celibacy or married fidelity, and that this is one of the central motives within the Creator's purpose for this whole world, which reaches its full glory in the coming together of the Lamb and his bride, the husband and wife, and loyal and loving faithfulness. And what he sees in Babylon is the deepest and darkest parody, which is so near to the truth and yet so far. The best and most successful lies are those that are so like the truth that it only takes a little blank to be deceived. Secondly, Bishop Wright continues, because of one of the great images of Israel and Yahweh in the Old Testament is that of Israel as Yahweh's bride, and one of the saddest prophetic images for when that relationship goes wrong is Hosea's picture, based on his own tragic experience of marriage, of Israel playing the whore, going off after idols. This is probably the root of John's particular vision. The point about Babylon is that it has worshipped idols, the quick fix pseudo-divinities that promise the earth, take all you have to give, and then leave you with nothing. Babylon, in fact, has become such a pseudo-divinity in itself. Third, he continues, like all great imperial systems ever recorded, the Roman world, which John knew, thrived on sexual irregularity. Whoredom was not simply a metaphor for Rome's idolatry and social and economic oppression. Illicit sex was a further symptom of the problem. When you have power and money, why not? Fourth, he finalizes, John uses the image of whoredom as an appropriate metaphor for Babylon oppression because there's something uncannily like prostitution going on when the rich empire lures others into its den. Here, says the great empire, is luxury beyond your wildest dreams. Here, all your fantasies can be fulfilled. You don't have to work hard for them. You don't have to organize your country wisely or justly or humanely to achieve them. All you have to do is come and see me and I'll share them with you. Of course, there's a price, but you won't mind paying that, will you? Once you take the golden cup offered by Babylon, you have to drink it. So this is just a sense of this character of the harlot that is understood, rooted in various things connected to Jewish and Christian beliefs. She's seated on many waters. This depicts a woman as sitting, meaning influencing and dominating every continent of the world. There's no place on the planet that's not touched by her darkness, except for where the truth of Christ is taught. In Hebrew, that expression means out of mankind or in a position over mankind. Her responsibility to deceive mankind by using all the temptations that would be lawless or Torahless. We see her then in a desert, a wilderness, back on the back of the beast, the same beast from the sea, the false Messiah. This beast from Revelation 13 suffered a death blow and now is seen here resurrected. The harlot is seen riding this beast, which gives her maybe temporary control or influence. The fact that the woman is riding the beast and is not the beast itself signifies she represents ecclesiastical power as distinct from the beast, which is political power. And that would be a commentary from Tony Garland. He believes that her position indicates on one hand she's supported by the political power of the beast, but on the other hand she's in a dominant role and at least is outwardly controlling this political power as represented by the beast. Clothed in purple and scarlet, where's the blue? And adorned with all sorts of things. Purple and scarlet were also the colors of royal vestment. The scarlet may reflect her identification of the beast who carries her, who is also scarlet. The color of her garments contrast with the fine white linen of the overcomers and the saints in Revelation 3:18 and 19 also. These colors were used in the priest vestments of the Old Testament, but we'll see that then the color of blue is missing. The color of blue represents God's law. If you refer to Numbers 15:38 through 40, it reads, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them to make fringes on the corner of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue cord on the fringe at each corner. And you have the fringe so that when you see it, you will remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and not follow the lust of your own heart and your own eyes. So you shall remember and do all my commandments, and you shall be holy to God." Same thing in Exodus 28, verses 4 through 6. The vestments of the high priests and the priests that worked in the temple all had the colors of blue, purple, and crimson. So note the harlot riding the beast is significantly missing the color blue, as was required in the Old Testament for priests and kings and all sorts of things. The color blue is in the Jewish prayer shawls today and is on the state flag of Israel. The harlot is missing the reminder of God's law and, in fact, is completely disregarding it. Tony Garland writes, her attire reflects her commercialism. Merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple silk and scarlet. I question this because in Revelation 20, the New Jerusalem will also be adorned with the very same jewels, but for very different reasons. The jewels and adornment are not bad in and of themselves. It's how they are attained and who suffered in that attainment, production, etc. Or are they a gift from God? So I don't have a problem with the colors in general or of the gold and the jewels. The issue I have that I think only a Jewish person would understand is the absence of the color blue. In her hand, she's holding a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. Heavens to Betsy, what is that? What's in the cup? A golden cup entices everyone to drink, for one expects the most precious liquid from such a precious vessel. Yet the cup contains nothing but abominations and unclean things pertaining to the woman's whoredom. Whatever is used by the world in order to turn believers away from their God is in the cup. Let everyone make their own list. It includes things that are bad in and of themselves, as well as things that have become bad because one does not view them as a means, but as an end in themselves. Anti-Christian culture and pleasure always work in close cooperation in opposing the church. Anti-Christian governments do not destroy every church building. They change some of them into places of worldly amusement. Throughout history, beast and harlot are always associated always associated together until the beast turns against the harlot. And that was a quote from William Henderson. Fornication means to prostitute, to practice prostitution or sexual immorality generally, but it's also used figuratively to denote the practice of idolatry in the Bible. To prostitute something is to take that which has a proper use and turn it into an improper use. So a prostitute takes sex, which has a proper use, and perverts it with an improper use, turning it into something illicit, causing fornication. In this case, the harlot represents religion, which has a proper use, but here has been prostituted for improper use. Rather than serving, it rules. The false use of religion causes spiritual fornication. The word fornication is used both of physical unfaithfulness, but also of spiritual unfaithfulness, as in Hosea 1 and 2, Jeremiah 2 and 3, Ezekiel 16 and 23. It is with this woman that the kings of the earth commit spiritual fornication, and it's showing this to be a unity of religion and state. And this was explained in large by Tony Garland. On her forehead was written a name, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of whores and of earth's abominations. Now, a lot of times the mystery word, depending on your your version of your Bible, they'll stick the word mystery as part of her name, and that would be incorrect. Mystery is a description of what we're saying about the name, okay? So mystery indicates something unknowable by man unless and until revealed by God. The antidote for mystery in the Bible is not investigation or discovery, but revelation. The mystery relates to her identity and relationship to the seven-headed beast. It's unfortunate that mystery appears in capitals as if part of her title, and it is not part of her title. What is the mystery? Various commentators have suggested that it's a mystery of how evil began, or a mystery of why she turns against God, or a mystery why over and over again the worship of other gods keeps surfacing, especially when these gods are not real and have no power and effect. Frankly, there's no consensus among the scholars on what the mystery is exactly, but it's something we don't know and we haven't figured out yet. On her forehead, well, like the shield of Israel and the beast worshippers that have this mark of the beast, this woman is also identified on her forehead. And the label on her forehead as the mother of harlots is to be contrasted with all the engraved golden plate on the turban of the high priest, which reads, "Holiness to the Lord." And you can see that in Exodus 28, 36 through 37. This priest is to be set apart to God, where she is set against God. What does her name mean, including great mother and abominations? She's great in the sense of having a dominant role of spiritual idolatry throughout history. In her is found the origin of all the other daughter harlots, for she predated them and begot or influenced them. Her harlotry speaks of her abominable practices and spiritual idolatry. Calling this woman the mother of harlots means that all the false belief systems of the world are rooted in her, and she represents all false religions, philosophies, and all false gods that are worshipped on the world, the whole false world system of religion. Many identify this harlot as the apostate Christian church, with the Roman Catholicism primarily in view. I believe this view, and I'm quoting Steve Sewell. He says he believes this view is far too limiting. I believe this great harlot represents far more than one specific religion. He believes that the harlot represents the whole world system, which is also the image of the beast. He equates those two things. The world system consists of all the false religions, philosophies, and false gods of the world, and thus this harlot is the whole world system that opposes the truth of God. Abominations is a word that means a foul thing, a detestable thing, of idols and pertaining to idolatry. Abominations are anything that must not be brought before God because it arouses his wrath, anything connected with idolatry. You can see this in Deuteronomy 18, 9 through 12. Okay. She was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. Being drunk with blood would be particularly offensive to John, who, being a Jew, had a keen appreciation for the prohibition against blood, eating blood, in Genesis 9:4, Leviticus 3:17, 7:26, and 17:10 through 13. Drunk is a sign of alcoholic addiction. She was addicted to the killing of the saints. Many believe that this is description of the atrocities committed by the Catholic Church in the Dark Ages, where it estimated that millions of people were killed in the Inquisitions, pogroms, witch hunts, and other excommunications and tortures, which led to death. Since this woman sits on the beast, both her and the beast are responsible for the blood of the saints. Certain religions are well known for their persecution and killing of Christians. Islam, Roman Catholicism, and others like Hinduism and communism in North Korea and China, for example. As it relates to Islam, it is as much of a government as a religion. They function as one, and in many of the Islamic countries, Christians are being heavily persecuted by both the government and other individuals. The woman is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Although the woman is said to be a city, Her influence and her is global in scope. It's not just one big city. It's all around the globe. She spans both geography and history. Her influence is scattered worldwide in the introduction of the languages in the judgment of Babel, when all mankind dispersed from the central location. Now she spans geography and history, for the beast is empowered by the dragon, who is Satan, and assumed dominion over the world as early as the fall of Adam and Eve. If the 7 heads represent 7 world kingdoms of special significance in the plan of God, then the woman's global influence extends from the earliest of those empires through our time and to the time of the second coming of Christ. This is a much larger view that we need to understand what Babylon is, this great city. Babylon, thus viewed, is past, present, and future. Its form changes and its essence remains the same. Remember, the harlot is closely associated with the beast. So close, in fact, she's said to be sitting on the beast. The beast is the entire anti-Christian persecution movement throughout history, embodied in successive world empire. And I'd say more than anti-Christian. That was Hendrickson who quoted that. I would say anti-God persecution. The great city is symbolic for both the governing authorities and the false belief systems of the world. In other words, it's the whole world system. And that's how we should kind of look. The whole world and its anti-Christian syndrome. And that is a quote from Sewell. So everybody's pretty much in agreement with this. I would rebut that the theory that this harlot is the Roman Catholic Church is that it contradicts what Scripture records, that she's a city, and there's no reason why she must be an ecclesiastical system when Scripture says she's a city. Moreover, she's associated with wealth and excess, and they may speak equally of politics and religion. That was Tony Garland. And I'm having a hard time because, they make a good case for the Roman Catholic Church to be potentially this woman for at least a period of time in history. And I'd like to point out that the Vatican is a city-state, and I'll just leave it at that. All right, this harlot is this Babylon. The question is, what does it represent? It reminds us of Babylon old. It recalls to our mind that the heathen center of wickedness and seduction of Tyre. You have to compare Revelation 17 and 18 with Ezekiel 27 and 28. Babylon indicates the world as the center of industry, commerce, art, culture, etc., and by which these means, all of these things seek to entice and seduce the believer, that is, to turn him or her away from God. It symbolizes the concentration of luxury, vice, and glamour of the world. There's a lot to think about here. I'm going to throw 3 questions at you here. Babylon, then, is the world is the center of seduction at any moment of history, particularly during this entire present time. What does that mean for us today? And what are the things that seduce people away from God? Is it our culture that is contrary to God, or what is it in our culture that is contrary to God and God's purposes? It includes things that are bad in and of themselves, as well as things that are bad because somebody doesn't view them as a means but an end in themselves. Bad things which draw us away from God can be different to each of us. What is bad for one may not be for another. So my question is, what's on your list? What are the things that draw you away? Whatever is used by the world in order to turn believers away from God is in the golden cup of the harlot. Let everybody make their own list of what they're drinking out of this cup. In small group, we'll talk about these items for thought and discussion, as well as your question. And then also in your handout is a poem, The Lady of Shalott, a poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Next week, we'll finish this chapter and we'll sort out all the beasts. Let me leave you with a message of warning, which is from Psalm 146, 3 and 4. Do not put your trust in princes, in mortals in whom there is no help. When their breath departs, they return to the earth. On that very day, their plans perish. And a message of hope from Psalm 130, from 31, verse 24. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord. God bless you and keep you this week. The last two slides here are the poem, just in case you don't have your handout with you, and you can read that at your leisure. Take care. Hope to see you in small group.